Carl Jung's most dangerous discovery wasn't about simple trauma recovery. It was about what happens to empaths after enduring prolonged narcissistic abuse, and why this transformation can either completely destroy them or create a form of consciousness that is unprecedented in human psychology. In his clinical practice, Jung observed empaths who survived systematic manipulation and reached what he called the final stage of empathic development. These weren't ordinary recovery stories. These were cases of complete psychological metamorphosis. Individuals who emerged profoundly changed, with abilities Jung had rarely encountered before. He considered this discovery dangerous because empaths who reached this stage often became unrecognizable to those who knew them. Imagine someone you once saw as fragile or overly sensitive suddenly becoming psychologically untouchable, able to feel deeply, yet immune to manipulation. Jung described this as sovereign empathy, the ability to navigate human emotions with clarity and discernment, feeling without being consumed, understanding without being responsible for others' pain. One of the most striking cases began with a patient he referred to as M, a 34-year-old woman whose empathic gifts had attracted a series of increasingly destructive narcissistic partners. When she first came to Jung, she was psychically dissolved, her sense of self so eroded she could barely distinguish her emotions from those around her. Over 2 years, M didn't merely recover. She underwent what Jung described as an alchemical transformation through shadow integration, where once she had absorbed every emotional current around her, she developed conscious permeability, the ability to choose exactly what to absorb and what to deflect. Jung wrote that M had achieved something he previously thought impossible: complete empathic sovereignty. She could feel the depths of another's pain without drowning in it, detect deception with uncanny accuracy, and remain immune to manipulation while retaining genuine compassion. Her transformation was so profound that even her family and friends noticed it immediately. The woman who had once been the family's emotional caretaker now set boundaries that seemed unbreakable. Former friends accused her of becoming cold or distant, yet Jung recognized that M had reached the final stage of empathic development, a stage he had only theorized, where an empath's suffering becomes the catalyst for a psychological evolution that could change the way humanity understands consciousness itself. The empathic crucible, paths of transformation. Jung observed that narcissistic abuse functions as what he called the empathic crucible, a psychological pressure cooker that either destroys empathic sensitivity entirely or forges it into something far more refined and powerful. The key to surviving this crucible lies in what he termed shadow integration. During abuse, the empath is unconsciously forced to confront their own shadow, the parts of themselves they have disowned or rejected. The narcissist, Jung noted, acts as a shadow mirror, reflecting back the empath's own capacity for manipulation, selfishness, and emotional detachment. Through this confrontation, empaths often undergo what Jung described as the 3 deaths. First, the death of their idealized self-image as purely good and giving. Second, the death of their belief that love alone can heal anyone. Third, the death of their need for external validation to feel worthy. This brutal psychological work is not gentle. It is an intense, often excruciating, forced individuation that pushes the empath to develop inner strength and autonomy. Jung categorized empaths after narcissistic abuse into 4 distinct paths. The first type, the dissolved empath, never recovers their sense of self. They live as psychic ghosts, permanently unable to distinguish their own emotions from those around them, repeatedly attracting the same destructive dynamics. The second type, the armored empath, shuts down their empathic abilities entirely, constructing psychological fortresses around their hearts. While they avoid further abuse, they also lose access to the gifts that once defined them. The third type, the wounded healer, transforms trauma into a mission to help others. While admirable, these empaths often remain trapped in compulsive rescue patterns. They can set boundaries, but their sense of worth still depends on being needed, and they remain vulnerable to subtle forms of manipulation. Finally, there is the sovereign empath, the 4th type. These individuals achieve full integration of their empathic gifts with their shadow elements. Jung described them as conscious vessels, able to hold the full spectrum of human experience without being depleted by it. Sovereign empaths can feel the emotions of others without taking responsibility for them, detect manipulation instantly, yet respond with compassion, and maintain firm boundaries without building walls. They develop what Jung termed archetypal wisdom, understanding human behavior at its deepest psychological levels. One of the most startling consequences of reaching this stage, Jung noted, is profound isolation. Sovereign empaths often find themselves unable to tolerate unconsciousness in others. They can instantly detect ego projections, manipulations, and hidden motives. This consciousness gap creates an unbridgeable divide between them and ordinary social circles, even families. The very transformation that empowers them also alienates them from those who cannot perceive or integrate the same level of psychological insight. Many sovereign empaths report feeling like aliens in their own lives. Their clarity allows them to predict relationship failures, detect subtle manipulations, and anticipate emotional patterns years before they manifest. Jung called this archetypal fatigue, the exhaustion of constantly witnessing the unconscious patterns in human behavior. Coupled with the responsibility of insight, sovereign empaths often experience the Cassandra complex, knowing truths that others reject or cannot comprehend. Despite the isolation and burden, Jung emphasized that the transformation into a sovereign empath is not just personal, it is archetypal. These empaths serve as bridges between the conscious and unconscious realms, their suffering and insight providing medicine for humanity's collective evolution. Jung believed that the most dangerous yet extraordinary gift of narcissistic abuse is its potential to catalyze this evolution in human consciousness. Jung also developed what he called the shadow integration protocol for empaths recovering from narcissistic abuse. This was not traditional therapy, but a form of psychological alchemy, transforming the lead of trauma into the gold of wisdom. The first stage is shadow acknowledgement, recognizing one's own capacity for manipulation, selfishness, and cruelty. Jung emphasized that empaths must own their tendencies and understand how their gifts may have been used unconsciously to control others or mask deeper psychological needs. The second stage is projection withdrawal. Here, the empath learns to identify how the narcissist mirrors their own disowned aspects, the grandiosity, the subtle controlling behaviors, the emotional numbness, and to systematically reclaim these projections. By doing so, they free themselves from unconscious entanglement and regain psychological sovereignty. Stage 3, boundary alchemy, teaches conscious permeability. Instead of building walls, empaths learn to choose moment by moment what to absorb and what to deflect. They develop empathic discernment, feeling without fixing, understanding without rescuing, and loving without losing themselves. The fourth stage, archetypal alignment, involves embracing the wounded healer archetype. Jung saw this as accepting that one's suffering prepares them for a larger purpose, a role in the collective unconscious. This stage is not about professional healing per se, but about embodying a deeper wisdom and compassion essential for human evolution. Techniques include shadow dialoguing, consciously conversing with disowned parts of oneself, empathic fasting, deliberately choosing periods of emotional non-absorption, and archetypal meditation, connecting with the universal patterns that govern human behavior. Jung stressed that empaths must stop trying to return to who they were before abuse. The chrysalis cannot become a caterpillar again. The goal is not mere recovery, but metamorphosis. He documented historical and contemporary examples, a composer who survived an abusive marriage, channeling trauma into archetypal music, a physician whose diagnostic abilities expanded after psychological manipulation by colleagues. In all cases, the key was seeing trauma as initiation rather than victimization. He also warned of traps that could derail empaths: spiritual superiority, where one believes they are beyond shadow; perpetual healing, seeking transformation endlessly without integration; isolation addiction, using evolution as an excuse to avoid connection; and the revenge trap, using insight to manipulate or punish others. Sovereign empaths must maintain daily shadow check-ins to remain conscious of their motivations, projections, and emotional reactions. Jung concluded that sovereign empaths represent a leap in human consciousness. They can feel the full spectrum of human experience while remaining centered in their truth, bridging ego consciousness and self-realization. Their role is not personal alone, it is archetypal. By surviving the empathic crucible, they carry the medicine humanity needs for its next evolutionary step. They are living proof that suffering, when integrated, can become a profound source of wisdom and transformation. Sovereign empathy, the ultimate transformation. The final stage of empathic evolution, as Jung observed, is both a gift and a burden. Sovereign empaths are profoundly aware of human psychology. They can detect deception instantly, understand motivations without judgment, and navigate emotions with mastery. Yet this heightened awareness comes with challenges that most people cannot comprehend. Ordinary social interactions often feel shallow or exhausting, and relationships may become strained because the empath sees too clearly. Jung called this the prophet's isolation. Just as a seer or visionary may be misunderstood, the sovereign empath often experiences rejection, not for being wrong, but for seeing too much. Their clarity can intimidate, and their ability to maintain psychological boundaries may be mistaken for coldness or detachment. Many sovereign empaths describe feeling like outsiders in their own families and communities. Yet, Jung emphasized, this isolation is not punishment. It is a necessary consequence of evolution. The empathic transformation is marked by what Jung termed archetypal sight. Sovereign empaths see patterns in human behavior, recurring cycles of unconscious actions, and subtle manipulations long before they fully manifest. This insight allows them to guide, teach, and model psychological integration for others. They become living bridges between the personal and collective unconscious, offering a form of consciousness midwifery to those navigating their own shadow work. Daily practices help maintain this level of awareness. Shadow check-ins, conscious reflection, empathic discernment, and archetypal meditation are essential. Sovereign empaths must continually examine their motivations, their responses to others, and the ways they engage with the world to avoid traps like isolation addiction, spiritual grandiosity, or subtle revenge. Jung emphasized that these individuals serve humanity best when they balance insight with humility and engagement, embodying wisdom without seeking recognition. Jung's most profound insight was that narcissistic abuse, though devastating, can serve as a catalyst for the next stage of human evolution. The suffering endured by empaths is transformed into sovereign empathy, creating individuals capable of navigating the complexities of human consciousness while remaining anchored in their own truth. The trauma, when integrated, becomes medicine for both the individual and the collective. For anyone recognizing themselves in this journey, Jung's message is clear. Your suffering is not a mark of weakness, but the crucible for transformation. The chrysalis cannot return to a caterpillar. Your evolution is irreversible, but it is also powerful and necessary. By embracing shadow integration, conscious boundaries, and archetypal alignment, you can emerge as a sovereign empath, a being capable of profound compassion, insight, and service. If you feel this resonates, acknowledge your growth. Comment, "I am becoming sovereign," and recognize that your transformation is not just for your own healing, but for the evolution of humanity itself. This is the ultimate gift of the empathic journey, turning trauma into wisdom, sensitivity into strength, and suffering into a legacy that transcends the individual.